Ever since the news broke of fraud at the Stocks and Securities Limited investment firm that saw the swindling of up to 4 billion Jamaican dollars out of client accounts, Jamaica and the international news have been abuzz with the fact that Spring star Usain Bolt is missing $12 million from his investment. There is much attention and fanfare to the point of making music videos and the non-stop blog investigation. But while many are distracted by these, there are certain actions by the finance minister that gives a clear indication to God-fearing people that the time of oppression is drawing near. As pointed out in Revelation 13, is this another example of order out of chaos? Greetings, welcome to Healthy Reforms. As we look much closer at this scenario that's just played out, the SSL saga that is consuming the attention of everyone, we have a very important message in this video, and I hope that you watch until the end so you can recognize the deception that we're all caught up in. And we'll be doing it in segments. The popular phrase, never waste a good crisis. That's what we see playing out here. And I'm going to show you how it's actually involved and how it's playing out in the financial sector reform that Dr. Nigel Clarke is proposing. And so it's very important that we understand these principles. You take a look at 9/11. When that occurred, there was a Patriot Act, and the Patriot Act actually had numerous civil rights and abuses: warrantless wiretapping, glowing surveillance state, war on academic freedom of expression, numerous abuses, even reforms that were not made to the Patriot Act after 9/11 to show that they were abusing rights. They weren't reformed. There was even the Real ID, which is basically a national ID, that was pushed into the bill. And so we begin to recognize that many of these scenarios, not wasting a good crisis, is actually used as a means of implementing things. While the masses are looking at one thing, there's something else taking place over here. And we have to be more intelligent, more discerning. Never waste a good crisis. That's a popular word. We heard that during COVID. And now I see that same principle playing out right now with the financial reform sector policy that is now being proposed. And I do hope that you want to be intelligent and to learn some more. So please stick with this video as we go through together to learn how we can be practically ready. It's called sleight of hand. While you're looking at one thing over here, there's something here being taken from you. And we're going to see how this is going to affect each and every one of us forever.
SSL was a relatively small securities dealer, and its problems do not pose a systemic risk to the financial system. There is therefore no need to panic. The financial sector is strong and well capitalized. Within the security dealer world, there are 38 licensed security dealers operating in Jamaica. Security dealers, according to information from the FSC, had assets under management that exceeded $1.4 trillion as at September 30th of 2022. The assets managed by SSL in all represented a little over 2% of the total assets under management by security dealers.
When one adds the securities sector of 1.4 trillion and the commercial sector of 1.2 trillion, SSL's comparative assets is reduced to 1%. This falls within a safe range, as is highlighted by University of the West Indies Senior Lecturer on Economics, Dr. Andre Houghton.
The market cap of SSL was a significant portion of our financial industry, less than probably 5%.
2%, Minister, sir?
Exactly. So with that, it means that there's always going to be room for error, right? In economics, we take a 5% margin of error, so we say 95%, and we're 98% here in the country, so we're still robust.
Okay.
The only difference is that because of this, the type of scandal and the people who it has impacted, it has gathered global attention and now sending that negative signal.
So suppose that such fraud or schemes were limited to Jamaica, Bernie Madoff, a securities dealer in the United States, was imprisoned for fleecing up to 65 billion US dollars from the common man to millionaires through his securities company. Similar operational and oversight mishaps existed between Madoff's scheme and SSL. From Britannica, we read, in 2001, Barron's Financial Magazine published an article that cast doubt on Madoff's integrity, and financial analyst Harry Markopoulos repeatedly presented the Securities and Exchange Commission with evidence, notably a detailed investigation. The world's largest hedge fund is a fraud in 2005. Still, the SEC took no action against Madoff. Large accounting firms such as PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, and BDO Seidman reported no signs of irregularities in their financial reviews, and JP Morgan Chase Bank ignored possible signs of money laundering activities in Madoff's multi-million-dollar Chase Bank account. In fact, the Chase account was used to transfer funds to London-based Madoff Securities International Limited, which some said existed solely to convey an appearance of investing in British and other European securities. No one knew that the supposed trades were not taking place because, as a broker-dealer, Madoff's firm was permitted to book its own trades. Madoff's employees reportedly were instructed to generate false trading records and bogus monthly investor statements. So after this massive 65 billion or more fraud from Bernie Madoff, what was the United States Securities Exchange Commission's response to that? Well, as you can see, there were just some internal and external administrative maneuverings to make the framework much more secure to ensure that persons can be protected. We can list some of them as seen here: revitalizing enforcement division, encouraging greater insiders, improving risk assessment capabilities, conducting risk-based examinations of financial firms, general stuff. But none of these things are so far-reaching and drastic as what Dr. Nigel Clarke is proposing, not just for the financial sector, but marks the beginning of the end of financial freedom and the freedoms that are in connection with that in the near future. So you heard it from Dr. Nigel Clarke himself that the economy is robust, it's doing well. Dr. Andre Houghton from UAD Senior Economist, he also said that there's a 5% room for error, and so Jamaica is at 98. And then we saw that SSL took into account 1% in terms of assets when you look at the commercial and the security sector. So why such a drastic decision for something that only accounts for 1%? Yes, mind you, it is large public on a public level. The publicity is there, and you want to show that you have made changes. But if you take a look at what the US did, the Securities Exchange Commission for the US, when they lost 65 billion, it never went that far in terms of what Nigel Clarke is proposing for the Jamaica's financial reform. And so we have to look at now what are those things that are being set in place in the financial sector reform, but also what the professionals in Jamaica are saying about it. Let's take a look. So what are the changes that are being proposed for Jamaica's financial sector to take effect within the next 18 to 24 months? Well, both deposit-taking institutions, inclusive of commercial banks, building societies, merchant banks, and credit unions, along with non-bank financial institutions comprising of securities dealers, insurance companies, and pension funds, being consolidated into one institution, the BOJ, or in other words, the central bank. FSC has been appointed leaders from the Bank of Jamaica. This, along with the proposed policy changes, has aroused the concerns from business leaders and players in the business sector, with Julian Nair, Chief Investment Strategist at the Jamaica Money Market Brokers Group and Chairman of the Jamaica Stock Exchange, sharing with the Jamaica Observer, this is the most significant regulatory shift in the history of our financial system. Was it needed? Truth is, I'm not sure that it was. National Commercial Bank Capital Market Chief Executive Officer adds to this concern when he says there is a global market view that bank regulators are typically overly conservative, which is not necessarily supportive of the entrepreneurial underpinnings of the securities market. He further adds, this is unlike a securities regulator that tends to facilitate market deepening and innovation with the context of prudent risk management. Our fears exist in this regard. Managing Director of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, reinforces Gooden's point at the World Economic Forum in 2022.
Private sector has a role. Private sector innovates much better than normally. Well, central banks innovate too, but private sector works with innovation. But central banks can bring this finality of payments that private sector really cannot, right?
So now we understand that the securities sector, which are non-deposit taking institutions, and the deposit taking institutions, the commercial bank, will be brought under the control of the BOJ. The question to be asked is that if it is that SSL only accounted for 1% in terms of assets, why is it then that both institutions, the commercial banks and the securities, are brought under the control of the BOJ? Because it is the securities sector that actually accounted for this $2 to $3 billion fraud. So therefore, shouldn't they be the one to be held accountable? But it does not even stop there. If it is then that it stifles innovation, it doesn't really support market deepening and the entrepreneurial underpinnings of the market, then why is this drastic decision for something that only accounts for 1%? And this is just the whole idea of the broad brush whitewash situation being applied here. And while many persons are distracted by the whole saga surrounding Bolt, they're missing the fact that this is opening the gates and is revealing that there is a bigger agenda at play here, and that's what we're going to jump right into in this video. So this agenda is wrapped up in the more effective establishment of the CBDC, or the central bank digital currency, over the Jamaican population, with a pretext for anti-fraud and greater access to the wider population. The central bank digital currency is a worldwide agenda to bring greater controls to governments. Jamaica's launch sets the tone for the eventual loss of financial freedom and other rights. Even Forbes published an article warning about the dangers of establishing such programs. Jamaica launched its digital currency on July 11, 2022. It is also called Jamdex. This will be managed by the BOJ or the central bank.
The very institution that will be conveniently taking control by consolidating the securities sector and the commercial banks under its control. So what is a CBDC? A central bank digital currency is a digital form of a country's fiat currency that is also a claim on the central bank. Instead of printing money, the central bank issues electronic coins or accounts backed by the full faith and credit of the government. How would the average citizen interact with this new system? Well, let us hear from the attendee at the World Economic Forum, the governor of the Central Bank of France, as he made his contribution in Davos 2022.
The retail customer, as a citizen, will have an account with the central bank. I don't have just an account with a commercial bank, I have it with the central bank, which has a lot of advantages for me. It's safe, it feels good, but yeah, there are some challenges with this.
The diagram on the screen gives a graphical representation of what the central bank governor is pointing out. To go cashless will mean that you and your money will be at the mercy of your government.
Because the central bank is ultimately, it's a public office. Commercial banks are under a commercial regime. Central banks are not under a commercial regime. What about interest rates on an account like that? When things are going well, how does this look like? Oh, on a bank run, how does this look like? Is this accelerating the bank run because I have a safe account with somebody? So these are then the fundamental questions. That's why I think it's excellent to see that 90%, 87, I think, central banks are looking into that and try, and we need to figure out how that all can work.
Did Jamaica figure out how it could work when it became one of 11 countries that launched its CBDC to date, even before well-developed countries with greater technological advances and more complex economies? Not necessarily, unless it was planned to go this way. This is what makes the Bolt SSL saga the perfect controversy to bring the new financial order out of this chaos. Jamaica's regulatory financial CBDC framework were not all in place. It was a progressive model. Even though persons are allowed to have a CBDC account or their commercial account, a soon coming crisis will drive everyone into the arms of the government's CBDC. The Atlantic Council CBDC tracker gives a level of insight to this when it shares on its website. Finally, CBDCs require a complex regulatory framework including privacy, consumer protection, and anti-money laundering standards, which need to be made more robust before adopting this new technology, which means Jamaica never had it before their launch, and this is a means to an end, a more effective way to prevent widespread resistance to what is set to be an inevitable takeover. It was the 32nd President of the United States of America, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who said, "In politics, nothing happens by accident. If it happens, you can bet it was planned that way." What could possibly go wrong with the use of CBDCs? In Nigeria, one of the 11 countries that launched their digital currency, is reflected the intent to go cashless, as ATM allowable daily withdrawals have been reduced from $225 per day to $45 per day to steer towards digital transactions, indicating soon that countries will not only be cashless but eventually choiceless. The Canadian government's response to the trucker protests over vaccination mandates is an example that they will be allowed no disagreement with the dictatorial powers, no means for redress over grievances, and that finances will be an avenue of deprivation and assault.
They locked up your trucking accounts, which means you can't work.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's right. And then also we have another business and they locked that account up too, and it had nothing to do with it.
Unbelievable. Wow.
Words of Christia Freeland, this will bite. What is the latest?
Yeah, that's right, Heather. That's exactly what we heard from the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister yesterday. We know that financial institutions are already moving to restrict access to both cash and cryptocurrency. That's another big thing here that we're watching as well. So the RCMP have been sharing information with these financial institutions on the protesters, their supporters, the organizers here, trying to sort of starve off or choke off access to money, which of course has now been funding this for some 3 weeks.
So eventually, governments will not rely on banks or certain institutions as GoFundMe to seize your funds, but will do so themselves, as your digital financial accounts will be with the government themselves. The preamble to the Declaration of Independence states, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, deriving their just consent from the governed." But unfortunately, it is now the first piece of Revelation 13 slowly making its way back to world dominance and sliding nations into dark age type tyranny. China gives us an illustration of the potential danger of CBDC, as access to the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness will be given to those who are deemed worthy by the government.
Place where everything you do, what you buy, how you behave, is tracked. The government gives you a score, and the score is a measure of how trustworthy you are as a citizen and determines what you're allowed to do, like ever. Boarding a train, getting a mortgage, all goes back to this score. It's called social credit. It sounds like that show Black Mirror, but it's actually happening in China. So how does that change you? No surprise, she's a 752. That's her rating with Sesame Credit, a private company working with the government on the algorithms for the social credit system. The scores go from 350 to 950 and are based on habits and behavior. Buy clothes or diapers, it's good. A lot of alcohol, too many video games, not so good. How Use 752 puts her in model citizen range and gets her discounts and privileges, like using a shared bike without a deposit.
In Revelation 13 verse 3, it prophetically declares, "And all the world wondered after the beast." The first beast of Revelation 13 is the papacy. This wandering after takes into consideration the nations embracing and enforcing the social teachings of the papacy. Laudato Si, care of our common home, has been the driving factor behind regulations and policies that seek to reduce carbon footprint, even if it means driving dairy farmers out of business or taxing non-compliant businesses out of existence, or simply taxing gas prices. A CBDC will make it much easier to control how you run your business.
The farmers have assembled, protested against the government's far-reaching plans to cut nitrogen emissions. This is one of the largest ever demonstrations by the farmers.
Should this presentation of the coming darkness cause the listener to despair? Certainly not. It is for hope and practical guidance to avoid deception that the scripture states in Revelation 1 verse 1, "The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to shew unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass." 2 Peter 1 verse 19 adds to this when it says, "We have also a more sure word of prophecy, whereunto you do well that ye take heed, as unto a light that shineth in a dark place until the day dawn and the day star arise." A sure word of prophecy warns us in Revelation 13 11 to 12, "And I beheld another beast coming out of the earth, and he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast." The first beast is the papacy or the Vatican, and the second beast is the United States of America. Due to the economic linkages and prowess of America, she will cause that no man might buy or sell save he that hath the mark or the number of the beast or the number of his name, according to Revelation 13. What more effective way than CBDCs, where your money is held directly by authoritarian governments themselves? And to any man who desires a safe shelter, the promise is left, "And ye shall seek me and find me when ye shall search for me with all your heart." Welcome, you made it until the end. Thank you for watching. I pray that you were blessed. If you want to learn more about the first beast and the second beast of Revelation 13, the papacy and the United States of America, the link will be in the description. Also, the article for this video, "Should Christians Invest in the Stock Market?" will also be available in the description. You need to read that one as well. Many Christians are putting their money where God is not encouraging them to. Not only that, given that this is the first video of 2023, we have a gift for the first 20 persons that use the contact form on our website, www.healthyreforms.com, and you'll be receiving a free copy of Darkness Before Dawn. Free copy for Darkness Before Dawn for the first 20 persons who use the contact form on the healthyreforms.com website. The Darkness Before Dawn is an abridgment of the book The Great Controversy, And of course, if you want the full copy, you can find it on our literature store on the website. And so we encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter so you can stay in touch with events or special studies that we'll be having. And it's a wonderful way in which you can know about the different things that will be coming up with in the future. Not only that, also kindly consider us when it comes to, your support in terms of your prayer and also your means. And so you can donate via Cash App or PayPal, or you can also consider using the literature store, which is a very good way at which you can get materials to support your spirituality and also your health. There are some wonderful books on there. And so look forward to a very blessed 2023 with you. Until the next video.